In the late 1990s, as a wind of change swept across Korea, heralding economic stability and cultural flourishing, in the shadows of this prosperity, events began to unfold that would become known as the missing persons case. Seoul, a bustling metropolis where neon lights reflected in rain-slicked streets, bore witness to a series of mysterious disappearances of young women. Each, initially perceived as a separate tragedy, eventually evolved into a tangled web of secrets, interwoven with threads of corruption and lawlessness. Back then, in 1997, Korea was preparing to greet the new millennium. The rapidly developing entertainment industry, K-pop, Korean dramas, all captured the hearts of young people and made them dream of a bright future. But behind this glittering facade hid dark corners where fear and despair reigned. It was in this oppressive atmosphere that the disappearances began. The first to vanish was a young university student, Choe Mi-ryeon. A young woman, full of hopes and plans for the future, she was returning home from classes late one evening. She simply vanished, as if dissolved into the night's darkness. No one could understand what had happened. She simply vanished, leaving behind only confusion and worry in the hearts of those who loved her. Initially, the police treated the case formally, regarding it as a standard, ordinary disappearance. But time passed, and there was no news of the missing person. Soon after, Kim Soo-hyun, a young employee of a large company, disappeared. She was only 23 years old. Kim was determined and ambitious, dreaming of a brilliant career and a happy family. She was making plans for the future, but everything ended in a single moment. Her disappearance caused a wide public outcry as she vanished directly from a busy street, practically before the eyes of passers-by. No witnesses came forward, and the investigation stalled again. The circumstances of her disappearance were shrouded in impenetrable darkness. The third victim was Park Yoon-hee, a young woman who worked at a fashionable boutique. She was 28 years old. Known for her cheerful disposition and a disarming, genuine smile, Park Yoon-hee adored life and always radiated optimism. Her disappearance was the most mysterious of them all. She vanished, as if dissolving into the morning mist, leaving behind only a suffocating sense of dread and a gaping void. With each new disappearance, the number of which relentlessly increased, the tension within the community grew like storm clouds gathering before a tempest. The families and loved ones of the missing, united by their shared grief and despair, began a determined search for the truth, trying to draw attention to this terrifying series of disappearances. They frequented the offices of government agencies, seeking help from newspapers and television, but received only an ominous silence from the authorities. A heavy suspicion hung in the air. The police were either inactive or, even more frighteningly, deliberately withholding crucial information from the public. In those years, Korea, like many other Asian countries, was plagued by the issue of corruption, which gnawed at the governmental institutions from within. Influential officials, abusing their positions and connections, could easily escape deserved punishment. Concealing the truth, fabricating evidence, and intimidating witnesses, all of this became a common practice firmly entrenched in the system. Therefore, people, having lost faith in justice, increasingly doubted the honesty and incorruptibility of law enforcement agencies. Finally, a wave of public outrage reaching unprecedented proportions forced the police to intensify the investigation. A special investigative team was formed. The team consisted of experienced detectives willing to take risks to establish the truth. Inspector Kim, a man of impeccable reputation, known for his heightened sense of justice and unwavering honesty, headed the group. Inspector Kim began meticulously studying all the case materials. He methodically collected evidence, questioned witnesses, and delved into the smallest details, trying not to miss a single clue. He was determined to uncover the truth, regardless of potential opposition from his superiors. His team assisted him, young and ambitious, ready for any challenge, brimming with enthusiasm and dedication. As the investigation progressed, the detectives began to notice strange discrepancies in witness testimonies, conflicting data in reports, and the blatant withholding of information. All of this suggested that someone was deliberately trying to confuse the investigation to lead it astray. A key moment came with the discovery of a shared detail in the disappearances. All the missing girls were attractive and had similar facial features, approximately the same height and age. This led the detectives to suspect a possible serial killer operating in the city, but this was only one version, and much remained to be discovered. The investigation advanced slowly but steadily. The detectives worked day and night, tirelessly, completely absorbed in their work. They realized that the price of every mistake could be immeasurably high. A life. One of the first steps was a painstaking examination of the personal lives of each of the missing girls. It emerged that they all led active social lives, spending much time on social media and interacting with a huge number of people. This, although not immediately, allowed the circle of suspects to be narrowed. Among those who needed to be checked first was Choi Min-ho, a successful businessman known for his extensive connections in high society. Choi was famed for his passion for young women. Disturbing rumors circulated about his indecent behavior and shadowy connections with members of the criminal world. Detectives began to carefully monitor Choi Min-ho, gathering information piece by piece about his lifestyle and numerous contacts. They discovered that he owned a luxurious house outside the city, where he often threw lavish parties. During the investigation, another version emerged: the possibility of the existence of a network engaged in human trafficking. In those years, this problem was acute for many Asian countries. Young women frequently fell prey to ruthless criminal organizations that transported them to other countries for forced labor or sexual slavery. Investigators commenced a meticulous examination of this version, conducting covert operations and gathering intelligence on potential transporters and distribution points. As the investigation deepened, Inspector Kim began to notice oddities in the behavior of his colleagues. Some avoided contact with him, as if fearing something, failing to share information, while others only cryptically hinted that he should be extremely cautious. One of the detectives working on Kim's team shared information that sent a chill down his spine. Several high-ranking police officials were exerting immense pressure on the investigation, demanding that it be shut down. Soon after, a certain Park Jong-su, a former police officer dismissed for corruption, came into the detectives' sights. Park was known for his strong ties to the criminal underworld and had access to confidential information. The detectives started to suspect that Park Jong-su might be involved in the series of disappearances. They initiated covert surveillance, meticulously gathering evidence that could confirm his involvement in these mysterious cases. It was right here that the most captivating and dangerous part began. Inspector Kim and his devoted team faced a difficult choice. On the one hand, they knew that uncovering this secret could have grave consequences, potentially leading to their dismissal or even death. On the other hand, they felt a profound moral obligation to the missing people and their desperate families. Fortunately, Kim's team was united and dedicated to their work, regardless of the risks. They resolved to fight until the end, overcoming all challenges and confronting unforeseen obstacles. Their investigation began with Park Jong-su. Under the guise of a routine inspection, they searched his house. What they found shocked them, piercing them to their very souls. In the home where he lived, they discovered photographs of the missing girls, faded with time, but no less horrifying for it. Alongside them were other clues, undeniably pointing to his involvement in monstrous crimes. That very day, as the sun began to set, marked the arrest of Park Jong-su. The interrogation conducted within the gloomy walls of the police station revealed that this man was merely a link in a vast, sprawling network. He confessed to working for influential individuals, whose names now sounded like a death sentence, those who controlled the organization of prostitution and human trafficking. However, the further the investigation progressed, the more convoluted the case became. Park Jong-su stated he had received orders to eliminate the girls, to cover up the trail of corruption, to hide the truth beneath the cloak of night. He named several high-ranking police officials whose epaulets seemed to gleam with glory, but in reality were closely tied to the criminal group. His revelations, which struck the country like a hurricane, were a true shock. The public, which had previously believed in the infallibility of the law enforcement officers, was outraged, experiencing indignation at the realization that the people meant to uphold law and order were involved in such terrible atrocities. The investigation had reached a whole new level. The detectives now had to prove the involvement of high-ranking officials in these terrible crimes, a task that was anything but easy. Inspector Kim and his courageous team felt immense pressure. They were threatened, offered enormous bribes, but they refused to back down. Like animals cornered, they stubbornly continued to gather evidence, question witnesses, and search for irrefutable proof. One of the most crucial moments was the detailed examination of phone conversations of high-ranking officials. The detectives meticulously listened to the recordings and discovered that they regularly communicated with a certain Park Jong-su, as well as with other individuals clearly involved in these heinous crimes. These conversations, carefully documented, became decisive evidence of their guilt. During the investigation, which lasted for many long months, the detectives learned the terrible truth. The disappearances of young girls were linked to a well-organized network that organized prostitution and human trafficking. The girls were kidnapped, held captive in inhumane conditions, subjected to unimaginable violence, and then sent to other countries, condemning them to even greater suffering. There was also confirmed data indicating that some of them had been killed. The collected evidence and testimonies were presented in the courtroom. The long and agonizing court proceedings began, stretching out like an endless series of days. The public held its breath in tense anticipation, watching every hearing closely, eager to see a just verdict that would triumph over lawlessness. The prosecution presented irrefutable evidence of the guilt of high-ranking officials, demonstrating their close ties to the criminal group, like the tentacles of an octopus, enveloping everything around. The defense attorneys, in turn, desperately tried to challenge the evidence presented, resorting to various tricks and sophisticated methods to snatch their clients from the clutches of justice. The trial, which dragged on for many months, finally came to an end. In the end, all the defendants were found guilty. Park Jong-su received a life sentence, which meant long years spent behind bars. High-ranking police officials were sentenced to lengthy terms of imprisonment, losing their freedom for decades. The verdict, delivered by the judge, caused a real storm of jubilation in society, which felt that justice had finally prevailed. People believed that justice had prevailed, but the case of the missing turned out to have tragic consequences. Following the arrest of Park Jong-su and his accomplices, the investigation, as if unraveling a tangled ball of yarn, led to the discovery of other crimes. New victims emerged, and with them, the locations of their final resting places. Sadly, not all of the missing girls were found alive. Some of them, whose lives were cut short, would never be able to recount what they had endured. This case became a true tragedy for the families of the victims, who had lived for many years in uncertainty, clinging to hope. They had lost their daughters, sisters, friends, those who were dear to them with all their hearts. However, the case of the missing also brought positive changes. After the exposure of this monstrous case, a large-scale reform of law enforcement agencies began in the country, designed to prevent the repetition of similar nightmares in the future. New laws were passed, aimed at combating corruption and protecting the rights of women. Society felt changes in its attitude towards victims of violence. People grew bolder, speaking out about the problems of corruption and lawlessness, shedding the shackles of fear. The case of the missing people became a symbol of the fight for justice and the triumph of truth. It showed that even in the most desperate situations, success was possible if one didn't give up and fought to the very end. This story served as a vivid reminder of how important it is to protect the weak and defenseless, to fight against injustice, and to remember that the truth always finds its way. But the story didn't end there, and the dark veil of mystery had yet to be completely lifted. The question remained, who was truly behind this monstrous conspiracy? Why did the police hide the truth for so long, concealing important information? And what drove people to commit such terrible crimes, crossing the line of what was permissible? To this day, many details of this case are shrouded in darkness. It remained unknown how many more lives this tragedy claimed, how many victims remained forever in the shadows. Some still believe the true culprits never received their just deserts. This story is not just a chronicle of terrible crimes, but also a tale of a courageous fight for justice. It speaks of people willing to risk their lives for the truth, of those who weren't afraid to confront the darkness. The case of the missing became a significant milestone in the history of Korea, vividly demonstrating that even in the darkest corners of society, glimpses of light can be found, that hope always exists. This story is a reminder that the fight for justice is never in vain, even if the path is strewn with thorns. As for Inspector Kim and his brave team, they continued their difficult work, sparing no effort in fighting crime and defending the interests of ordinary citizens. They became a living symbol of justice and incorruptible honesty, an example for many. Their story is also a reminder that even in the most seemingly hopeless situations, one can remain human, maintain faith in a better future, and never lose hope. But as is often the case in such matters, An unhealing wound remained forever in the hearts of those who lost their loved ones, those whose lives were irrevocably changed by this tragedy. Their pain is an eternal reminder of the need to fight injustice, to defend the rights of every person, whoever they may be. Every life is priceless. Every story deserves our attention and compassion. In this story, as in many others, we see that true justice is not just retribution for the guilty. Above all, it is the healing of the emotional wounds left by evil deeds. It is a chance to find hope where despair and darkness reigned.